testimony that he put out so the mafia wouldn't kill him, going along with the lie, but once he got in front of the cameras, he spilt his guts. I mean, it's the same thing. Please continue.
Well, I think the fact is we had a Republican-appointed federal judge, Judge Roll, working with a Democratic Congresswoman, Giffords, and a Republican who represents Midland, Texas, which is, by the way, that's George H.W. Bush's old hometown. So the mere fact is that these individuals must have known this is such an endemic problem. They decided to, throw caution to the wind. Who cares about the separation between the legislative and judicial branch? Let's do what's best for the country. However, Judge Roll paid with his life, and Congresswoman Giffords has been incapacitated very severely. I mean, the message was received, I believe, and there are special air corridors that are known to these smugglers where they fly through these corridors over the border at night, and there's special drop zones and special landing strips that are cleared in advance where they drop the drugs and in some cases pick up the weapons. But the weapons are clearly, now we know with Fast and Furious, just going across the border en masse to destabilize the situation in Mexico, and it's been very successful. I've talked to people from Mexico. There is a state of fear in that country. I mean, the mere fact that we see bloggers being beheaded, people trying to get the truth out, Hillary Clinton saying there may be a need to send troops there, but we have our troops committed in Afghanistan and other countries, but we don't even have them in the country to our south.
Well, Wayne, the magnitude of this, that you've talked to a federal informant known to you, and this information integrates with everything I've got, and that Judge Roll was hit, Giffords was hit but survived, this other Texas person is hiding out, it's admitted that all these other people have gone to jail. I mean, how can they have it where MF Global steals billions publicly and doesn't get in trouble, and the head of the Justice Department, who we know was involved in Oklahoma City, Holder, is publicly caught lying and says, well, he didn't mean to lie, the intent matters. And even the New York Times reports a year after you and I did that, okay, the Justice Department was shipping drugs in, not just guns out. It is Iran-Contra Part 3 or 4. I mean, it is a repeat, but now it's all, they're caught red-handed and no one gets in trouble. Why were they so scared of Roll and Giffords? They knew that they had government credibility and could bring them down.
They knew too much, and of course this guy, Jared Loughner, is just like all the rest of these programmed assassins, Hinckley, Bremer,
Sirhan
from assassins or attempted assassins. We go back through Sirhan, of course.
All right, Wayne, three's the charm. We got you on the phone here in seconds. The Skype cut out again from your iPhone, so now we're going via the phone. Right when you pointed out Sirhan, his lawyers, LAPD have admitted it wasn't his gun, mind control. From when I read and talked to some of the eyewitnesses, that guy was just the cutout shooting a gun. There were other shooters. What does your informant say about this?
Well, this guy Loughner, I think it's important. It's been reported already that Loughner, of course, has been declared mentally incapacitated to stand trial at the present time. He's now in a federal psychiatric facility in Missouri, and there was a report that he's actually being administered psychotropic drugs in his Kool-Aid, okay? So here we have the Kool-Aid, shades of Jonestown, and I forget which, it was either, I think, Salon or Slate, one of those online publications reported this. So it's not from the National Enquirer or the Globe or anything. It's a legitimate source. But here we have the shooter, and it looks like he's just going to be consigned to the federal loony bin, and we'll never really know what happened with him. But clearly, he showed all the signs of these other programmed assassins we talked about, or attempted assassins. And I think it's important to note too that Eric Holder is being defended now by a member of the Judiciary Committee, Hank Johnson from Georgia. Hank Johnson, by the way, is the individual who beat Cynthia McKinney and got a lot of money in his campaign from people like Herman Cain. And Hank Johnson is the same guy who said if we put too many troops on the island of Guam, the island will capsize. So clearly he's not wrapped too tight. But we have him now as the #1 defender of Eric Holder, saying it's okay for the Justice Department to investigate itself on Fast and Furious.
Well, Wayne, is this informant fearing for their life? You know, I've interviewed a few people you put me in touch with and end up dead, namely the D.C. madam. She was on hold one day on an interview trying to tell me stuff, and I said, listen, honey, don't tell me anything that you don't say on air. You better go public if you've got all these names and stuff. And then they ended up obviously killing her, and, you know, you were trying to help her out and warning her. And I talked to her landlord, or the condo manager. She owned the condo, and she said, oh, she was a great lady. Everything was prepaid. She was being followed. She was hiding stuff from her mother's. He sent me her lease agreement and letters. The letter wasn't even in the same hand. Not even a handwriting expert, you know, could figure this out. It was a totally different hand. Just amazing that this is going on. Are you worried? Is your informant worried? I mean, if this Texas politician's worried, this is big news. I mean, we know there's that weapons conduit right there, and we know Napolitano's a gangster. We know Holder's a gangster. We know that Holder said a month ago, don't investigate Fast and Furious. Bush was involved pre-Obama, which is true. This is an ongoing program.
Yeah. Yeah, well, my informant has been threatened before. I mean, he's not new to this game, and so he's of course taking the precautions. But him being threatened, he's seen that happen before. But obviously, the mere fact that we had this happen to a sitting member of Congress and the chief judge for the District of Arizona. A Bush appointee, I would add. I mean, it just goes to show that it doesn't matter what party you're in. If you start asking the wrong questions, you're putting yourself in danger. And certainly these two individuals did. And there's a third congressman who's clearly fearful for his safety now.
Specifically, Mike Conway, your informant said that he was involved researching this and that he's in hiding, basically?
Well, no, I mean, he's obviously still in Congress, but my source, you know, had been in contact with him, just like he had been in contact with Giffords and Judge Roll. As a matter of fact, like I say, when he met them together in North Phoenix, and he was a little surprised that a member of the House and a federal judge would have been there, but I think they must have understood the gravity of the situation. So, you know, who cares about separation of powers then when you see the very, you know, the border being used, federal agencies involved in this criminal conspiracy to smuggle weapons for drugs.
And of course, when I said, you know, in hiding, I meant like hiding out. You know, you said taking precautions, kind of an overstatement there, but by me. But specifically, we know it's a criminal conspiracy now. This is one of the few cases where it's 100% admitted, perjured before Congress, shipping drugs in, New York Times 2 Sundays ago, drugs, laundering money, guns, Chicago Tribune, El Paso Times, Sinaloa allowed to ship cocaine in, government admits it's true. I mean, this is bona fide, absolute proof here of a false flag. How is this affecting, from your sources there in D.C., in closing, how is this affecting the power structure?
Well, I think clearly the power structure is concerned. I think if we knew the truth, we'd find out a lot of people knew a lot of things and never actually said anything, which makes them, of course, culpable, criminally, at least criminally negligent. You know, like I say, you've got as the point man for the Democrats and the Judiciary Committee a guy who's flaky like Hank Johnson. You know, I mean, I remember when Cynthia ran against this guy, Hank Johnson. You know, he's a Buddhist, and he's some sort of karate expert, and yet he's representing a majority African American district. He's African American, but you know, how many Buddhists would you find in the suburbs in DeKalb
By the
County,
way, we could pull the clip
Atlanta?
up if people forget, guys. Go to YouTube, type in the congressman's name and capsizing, and I mean, he said it. He said, "Listen, we can't put too many troops on an island because islands float." He didn't know there are mountains coming up and land masses sticking up. He actually thinks that the rock in the trees is floating. I mean, that shows when they get rid of Cynthia McKinney, who I know you're friends with, who exposed government drug dealing, all this, they put somebody in who literally is just a complete Pop-Tart. I mean, he probably has, I mean, I'm surprised the man can tie his shoelaces. I mean, who thinks that islands float?
Well, I mean, you know, maybe he's availing himself of some of the stuff that's coming across the border from Mexico. I mean, but you know, clearly, if that's who the Democrats are using as their point man, who's now going on TV to defend Eric Holder, I mean, I think that just goes to show how bad the situation is. I mean, why isn't there somebody who's a little, you know, who's wrapped a little bit better mentally, asking the questions? This is clearly an attempt to protect Holder, which also is an attempt to protect the White House from the political fallout.
But that shows the strategy. To use someone who is a low-grade moron who doesn't even know they're a shill just to babble incoherently, you're not going to get anything out of him. And I think that is the strategy, just an over-the-top. I mean, take MF Global Corzine, 40-to-1 bets with people's money, J.P. Morgan getting the money. The government knows where it was wired. Now the head of the CME group goes public and says, look, they did know where it went. Corzine took the money briefly, and then I'll let you go because I know you're busy, Wayne. I have another meeting coming up with Phil Berg there at the press club. But what do you make of the MF Global and how bold it is? For the first time in the history of the Chicago Mercantile, billions missing, and they just say, hey, that's the way it is.
Well, this is a
well, I mean, it shows that Congress has been asleep at the wheel. I mean, this whole thing where Corzine is getting treated with kid gloves when he's obviously a crook, and this thing was all engineered. You know, Goldman Sachs was involved in this whole operation. This was, you know, basically betting all these people's money on a big in a big gambling casino on the